This is Under Review, the show that talks about Colorado sports with some national sports stories as well. I'm Jordan Long. Well, last Saturday, the Denver Broncos played their final preseason game. Now, I sort of previewed that last week, just saying it was a battle of the backups, but it was certainly a battle of the backup quarterbacks. Jared Stidham started for the Denver Broncos and he played very well. Stidham ended 17 of 28 passing for 236 yards and one touchdown, while Ben DiNucci was also the quarterback who played, who was trying to make a roster spot. He was 11 of 15 passing for 117 yards and one touchdown. Now, I thought Ben DiNucci and Jared Stidham played very well and were able to march the team downfield. One guy that was really on the bubble and needed a great performance was tight end that is, Albert O. Albert O bailed out, he balled out, I should say, and he caught 7 passes for 109 yards. Denver won the game 41-0. Now, you can't put a lot of stock in preseason, I realize, but Denver finished the preseason at 1 win and 2 losses. Again, it doesn't really matter because it's preseason. Now, all the NFL teams needed to get down to the final 53 yesterday. This is always hard for the coaching staff. The problem is players can play well and show that they are NFL talent, but sometimes it doesn't matter as they're cut anyway, like Albert O. Now, there weren't that many surprising cuts by the Denver Broncos, but one guy I was hoping that would make the roster, and he didn't really show a whole lot. In fact, he didn't even make the practice squad, was wide receiver Kendall Hinton. Hinton has been with the Broncos since 2020. Now, as you all know, he is probably most known for being the starting quarterback in Week 12 against the New Orleans Saints in 2020. At that time, the other quarterbacks on the roster were out. Those included Drew Lock, Blake Bortles, Jeff Driscoll, and Brett Rippon. They were all ineligible due to close COVID contact. Now, this was a very strange story at the time because Denver tried to move the game, but the NFL said no. It was basically teaching the Broncos and NFL teams a lesson during the COVID-19 pandemic. Anyway, it really wasn't a very fun game as Denver lost 31-3. Hinton was the only quarterback on the roster at the time for that game because he had quarterback experience in college. He was 1 of 9 for 13 yards. Hinton was not a quarterback, though, and we saw that he was a wide receiver. In his career, he caught 39 passes for 486 yards and one touchdown. I expected him to compete and make a roster spot as a fifth or sixth wide receiver, or even as a special teams player. Well, honestly, he didn't do anything in the preseason games to show the coaching staff he should be on this roster. He was targeted 2 times and didn't have a catch. That isn't a surprise that Denver let him go from the active roster. Another notable cut from the final roster by Denver included wide receiver Montrell Washington. And the thing about him and the reason why he was kind of significant is because he was a draft pick last year. It basically showed that George Payton, the general manager for the Denver Broncos, doesn't know how to actually draft, and Montrell Washington was cut. Now, Ben DiNucci played well but couldn't beat out Jared Stidham. I'll tell you what happened to Ben DiNucci. But anyway, in the preseason, he was 21 of 31 passing for 187 yards and 2 touchdowns. Stidham, on the other hand, actually played well and had more passing yards at 416. In the end, the Broncos let Ben DiNucci go from the active roster. I will get it in a moment where Ben DiNucci is, because he is with the Denver Broncos, but he's not on the active roster. Now, it wasn't a surprise that Ben DiNucci did not make the active roster because the fact of the matter is Stidham played well. But what I am surprised about is that the Broncos have 2 quarterbacks on the active roster, and it's not enough. Going back to Montrell Washington, he was drafted last year and he didn't do much with 4 catches for 2 yards, and Montreal Washington was more the punt and kick returner. He didn't make an impact during preseason. Now, I don't know what they saw in training camp and practice, but the thing is, though, the Broncos needed to let him go. Now, the Broncos will also have a new kicker. They decided to let Brett Maher go. He signed with the LA Rams. Maher was 4 of 6 on kicks in the preseason, and he seemed okay to me. So why did the Broncos let him go? Well, they traded for Will Lutz. Now, Lutz was 4 of 4 in the preseason for the New Orleans Saints. And honestly, the trade actually sort of made sense because you didn't give up a lot of value. A 7th-round pick for him. Now, Lutz is familiar with Sean Payton since he was with the New Orleans Saints. Now, Will Lutz was with New Orleans since 2016. Sean Payton knows him well since he coached Lutz from 2016 to 2021. In that time, I do like that he's an 84.6% kicker, so he's pretty accurate. The problem is from 40 to 49 yards, he is 56 of 86, or making 82.3% of his kicks from that range. From 50 plus, he is 17 of 29, or making 58.6% of his kicks, which I do not like. And the reason why is he misses, especially in the regular season, the long try from 50 plus, especially if he misses, that gives the opponent's offense really great field position. You don't want to give opponents great field position. He also played half of his games in a dome stadium. And I said this last week. It's a little different in Denver because all of your home games are played outside. So that's half of your games are played outside rather than a cozy bubble. Now with this trade, as it stands right now, the Broncos draft picks in 2024 include a first, a second, a third, a fourth, 2 fifths, and a 7th. So you basically gave up a 7th-round pick for Will Lutz, and that is okay. Now, the Broncos also traded tight end Albert O. I thought Albert O made the team in his last preseason game. I know it was 3rd and 4th stringers, but the fact of the matter is he looked great. Albert O caught 7 passes for 109 yards, and it looked like he was locked to make this team. Well, it seemed like Alberto was cut at first, but actually what happened was the Broncos traded Alberto to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 7th-round pick in 2025. In return, the Broncos received a 2025 6th-round draft pick. So that is not this upcoming draft, which would be 2024. That is next year. The thing that hurt Alberto is he can't play special teams or block that well. The Broncos had to get rid of him. At least they got something back. Now, as for the Broncos and all the teams in the NFL, all the rest of the 31 teams, is they had to make the practice squad today. And the fact of the matter is, the Broncos' only big move was to place Ben DiNucci onto the practice squad. I know there are 15 other players, but that was a major signing. This means, though, even though that Ben DiNucci can't make the active roster, he can still get called up to the active roster depending on what happens with, let's say, if Jarrett Stidham is hurt or if Russell Wilson go down. And I don't want Russell Wilson to go down. At least the Broncos have 3 quarterbacks. Of course, the Broncos weren't the only team letting people go by yesterday's deadline. Now, the whole NFL was as well because you had to be onto the 53-man roster yesterday by 2 p.m. Mountain Time. The Chicago Bears had a competition for the backup quarterback. Now, this is one that I really didn't see happening, is that P.J. Walker ended up being released. This was a surprise because P.J. Walker actually started 7 games over the past 3 years for the Carolina Panthers. It looked like he was a lock to make the team. The Chicago Bears, that is. If you look at his stats in Carolina, he was 4-3, so 4 wins and 3 losses with 1,461 passing yards and 5 touchdowns. He agreed to a contract with the Bears during the offseason. It was 2 years, and it looked like the right guy to back up Justin Fields because you were a veteran in PJ Walker. The fact of the matter is, PJ Walker actually played in the NFL. Well, Walker struggled in the preseason, and he was 11 of 23 passing for 96 yards, one touchdown, and one interception. Not that great. That gave way to rookie quarterback Tyson, I should say, Tyson Bagnet, I should say, who was 20 of 29 for 156 yards and one interception. Bagnet was more accurate and had more passing yards. Seemed like the right choice, even though it was a surprise the Bears decided to cut PJ Walker. Now, I'm not going to say this is a surprise by the Buffalo Bills, but this is a guy that I actually liked when he was with the Denver Broncos. And again, it's not a shock that the Buffalo Bills released him. Shane Ray. The Buffalo Bills released him, and he had played for the Broncos from 2015 to 2018 and was trying to make an NFL comeback. He hadn't seen action in an NFL game since 2019. He actually tried out for the Buffalo Bills, and it was during minicamp, and that was good enough for the Bills to say, hey, you know what? We're going to take a chance on you. That's all you want is a chance. Well, it didn't last. He played in the Bills' first preseason game against the Colts and had 3 tackles. In the second preseason game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Ray had 1 tackle, but he sustained an injury. And if you look at it, in all, he had 4 tackles in the preseason, so Shane Ray really didn't do too much. At least the fact of the matter is he's part of Super Bowl 50 for the Denver Broncos, so no matter what, he's a Super Bowl champion. In that second preseason game, he was hurt with a hamstring injury. So he's done with the hamstring injury, and the Bills placed him on injured reserve. They let him go, but reached an injury settlement. So that was at least good. Even though that he may not have played very long for the Bills, at least Shane Ray got paid for the preseason, and the fact of the matter is now he can go about his life. I don't see him ever playing in the NFL again because of the fact that he is hurt. And who wants to take a chance on this guy ever again? I'm just glad Shane Ray can say, hey, I played in the NFL, which many players can't say they did. And he can also say, hey, I attempted an NFL comeback, but it fell short. I can hold my head up high. Plus, I'm a Super Bowl 50 champion. You have a Super Bowl ring. What more do you want? Again, not a surprise that Shane Ray is gone from the Bills, but this may have been the last time we will ever see Shane Ray on a football field. Of course, there are many other notable cuts around the league, and if you want to find out who has been cut, just go to NFL.com or just put in cuts by my whoever team, the Arizona Cardinals, Baltimore Ravens, or the other 31 teams that I have not or I should say, the other 30 teams I have not listed. Because the fact of the matter is not only did the Broncos cut people, but 31 other teams did as well. And of course, there are 32 teams in the NFL. You can also look at who made the practice squad. Hey, maybe it's an impact player. You never know. Just check those out, and they will be on the actual NFL website or even the team's website. So be sure to check to see what your favorite teams did during cutdowns and practice squad availability. And I mean, what do I mean by that is that who was signed to the practice squad. I'm Jordan Long. Thank you for watching this edition of Under Review. You can follow me on Twitter at SportsScoop1. Read my blog that I write Mondays through Fridays at sports-scoop.com. Thank you for watching this edition of Under Review. Have a great week, and I will catch you next time here on Under Review. Thank you, and have a great week.